Hi, friends. We survived another work week. It's officially Friday. Welcome to CANNAfact Friday. This is episode 5. My name is Adriana. I'm the VP of Strategy at ISA, an insights firm based in LA that specializes in cannabis consumer research. And I am joined today by my co-host, David Palaschuk, the author of the first and best-selling book on cannabis branding called Branding Bud, the Commercialization of Cannabis. Welcome, David, and happy Friday.
Thank you. Hi, Adriana. It's great to be here as always on our fifth episode. I'm excited about our guest today. And before we introduce him and get started, just to call out, every Friday we come together. We take some interesting data points that we found during the week, and we invite industry experts to talk about them and give us some insight and try to contextualize those data points in the evolving industry that we participate in every day. That said, before we move forward and in terms of making the most out of the data, we also invite everybody to ask questions. So we've got our chat, and please feel free to ask questions as we move along. We will try to do our best to answer those, and we'll also lean on our guest, Marco Hoffman, to answer those as well. So again, we want to hear from our viewers. Please feel free to ask questions as we move through it, and we'll get to that as soon as we can. I would like to introduce Marco Hoffman, our guest. Marco is perhaps one of the most overlooked people in the industry. Marco has been in the industry for quite some time, back from the legacy days. He is the co-founder of the Venice Cookie Company in California. They have launched brands like the 420 Bar and Cannabis Quencher. He then moved up to Washington in 2012 when the I-502 law passed here to open Evergreen Herbal, and went on to create such brands as Sinners and Saints, Blaze Cola, Bad Hombre Chocolate, Reimagine Wellness, among others. I should say too that Marco really focuses on his businesses, his employees, and his products, and that's why most people don't know Marco. But if there's anyone that has just a wealth of knowledge and an incredible amount of experience in the industry, it's certainly Marco Hoffman. I'd also like to just call out, before coming into the industry, Marco was a cinematographer and had worked at MTV and National Geographic, traveling around the world, and has taken his sense of design and his knowledge of food and culture and world travel, and has really translated that well into the cannabis industry. So that said, I am pleased to introduce Marco Hoffman not only as our guest, but a dear friend and dare I even say mentor as well. Welcome, Marco.
Thank you, David. I'm excited to be here.
Right on.
Yeah.
We're excited to have you here. That said, Adriana, should we kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. So let's throw up that first. Well, actually, let me introduce it first, and then we'll throw up the slide. And I'm really curious to get Marco's take on this one too, because of his experience with all these amazing products that you mentioned, David. So because Marco's here with us today, we thought it would be fun to talk about edibles, which is something that we haven't covered yet on CANNAfact Friday. And we wanted to know really what's driving the demand for edibles. What are the reasons why consumers are choosing edibles? What are they looking for? What's the appeal? So we asked 365 people who had consumed edibles in the past 3 months, and this is a nationwide survey. So we gave them some prompts to choose from. We also gave them the opportunity to write in their answers if they wanted to. And here are the results. Let's throw it up there. Woohoo! All right. So we see that, of course, taste is a big factor. 22% say that they are choosing edibles because they like the taste. Also, we see health. Health is something that we really, I think people that I've spoken to in the industry really say that they know about their consumers who choose edibles is they are interested in like a healthier option. And that's why that's really driving that. And then a third thing that really stood out to me is discretion. 17% chose edibles because they are more discreet than other form factors. So curious to hear, what are your initial thoughts looking at these numbers?
Yeah, they align with what with my understanding of the market as well. I think that there is certainly smoking has become such a taboo, and especially in public places, bars, restaurants. So as we look to the next kind of wave of where the cannabis industry is going, consumption lounges, and even kind of acceptance into mainstream channels, I think that you'll see more and more edible consumption because obviously smoking is an issue. Even the building that I live in, even though I'm in California right here, they don't allow smoking. So you really have to choose, between vaping and edible consumption, even in your own apartment. So there's a logistics component to it as well. I think it's also important to note that, like, when you eat an edible, what's happening on a biological level is the THC is converting in your liver to another chemical called delta hydroxy, which is a lot more bioavailable than THC. So the experience is a little bit different. Some people prefer that experience over just regular consumption. So,
Oh, so Marco, I hope you don't mind if I interrupt you for just 1 second. We do have a comment from someone in our audience. Peter wants to know, well, he says, hi, my name is Peter. I own Cannabis Express. I used to buy Marco's 420 bars.
Thanks.
His question
Pete.
for you is, when you started making 420 bars, were you using trim?
No, the 420 bar, a good question, Peter. The 420 bar came from the dry weight equivalent of how much material we were using in each. If you remember, those original bars were 180 milligrams. Today, we not allowed to make those bars anymore. So it was the dry weight equivalent of what was going in there from the trim perspective. And we used essentially, we started off using Rick Simpson oil and then moved into distillate.
Cool.
Marco,
thanks for your question, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Marco. I'd like to just sort of come back to the slide for a moment. I think what's interesting, if we contextualize it within the pandemic, there was lots of movement in terms of people staying at home. So all of a sudden, let's say parents that consumed a particular form factor were all of a sudden now being forced to be more discreet in front of their children. And even perhaps, the respiratory aspect of the of COVID, either prevents or slows down, people consuming in a form factor of smoking. Or do you see any correlations there? Potentially as is it really a whole bunch of things adding up to move people away from smoking and to consuming other ways?
Absolutely. I mean, we certainly saw a huge bump in the edible sector during COVID for all those reasons you mentioned, as well as, if you remember, if you go back in history, there was the Vapegate scandal where people were getting popcorn lung, and there was, all this fear around the vape pen sector heading into a respiratory pandemic, heading into lockdowns where everyone's stuck at home. And I think that a lot of people were the stigma of rolling a joint around their kids makes them uneasy. And we certainly see, what you don't have here is like age numbers on the edible consumer. So what we see is that the edible consumer tends to skew to an older demographic than the flower component. And we attribute that to, or even the dab, the oil, the concentrate, which skews even younger, right? And so what we attribute that to is it's just a lot more approachable to, someone who's 50, 60 years old. Maybe they live in a communal home of some type and they can't smoke, but just the idea of rolling a joint, maybe they've got arthritis and it's hard for them to roll a joint, but it's just more approachable when it's a gummy or a chocolate or even a beverage. So you see that the form factor is and by the way, it's interesting too how those form factors are shifting. Initially, the iconic edible was always a pop brownie, and that has now
with mixed reviews on that one, right?
Yeah, right. And now it's shifted to like the largest sector in the edible market is now gummies. So it's interesting how that perception has changed. And
I totally agree with everything that both of you just shared, sort of hypotheses about why they're becoming so popular. And I would add one more thing to that, and that is when we saw the same thing, right? We saw that people were choosing edibles at a higher rate during COVID or during the first lockdown. We're still in COVID, so we can't really say that it's over yet. But I would add one more thing, and that is like a stocking up behavior. So people didn't want to venture out of their house as much as they normally would. They didn't necessarily want to be around people in a store shopping. And we saw delivery becoming more popular, but also I think that stocking up behavior, right? They're keeping more on hand. Edibles last longer than flour in many cases. So that's another, I think, contributing factor to this. Oh, and I have a question from Liz Fowler. Interesting that people indicate a reliable, predictable experience with edibles. I have not experienced that or heard this. What is the future of nano-emulsion edibles with a faster and more predictable onset? Good question.
Yeah. So great question. I think that is the future. I think the race is to get to sub 5 minutes, which to my knowledge, no one has been there. There's, some great technology out there, Source, Vertosa. There's many more, just to name, those are the big two players, if you will, but they're all in that 15-minute realm. I think it's a race like to the moon to get to sub 5. If you get to sub 5, you're really kicking in the teeth of the alcohol, beer, and wine competition. It's interesting how that works. So THC, we all know this. If you've ever packed a bowl or anything, THC is sticky. And so on a molecular level, what happens is that stickiness means it's forming chains. And what that technology is doing is it's breaking the chain up. So now imagine a log going down a windy river. That windy river is your vascular system. So every time it hits a bend, that chain, it takes a long time to go around every bend. Well, if you take that log and you chop it up into little pieces, all of a sudden it's going to flow down that chain much more rapidly. So that's essentially what the technology partners are doing, is they're nanofying the molecule, which is a little bit of a misnomer because they're not actually shrinking the size of the molecule. They're just preventing it from forming chains, and it flows into your blood through your bloodstream faster.
Wow. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah.
That was a great description. I want to come back to a couple of things also that was said. So I see there's a comment up. Nolsi said she's asking about discretion, and we did speak about that just a little bit in terms of rolling a joint in front of your kids or perhaps your other family members. So for sure, smell and the discretion is really important, and I think has played an issue in people's movement from one form factor to another, especially during the pandemic. But a couple of other things to mention. I've noticed a lift in pre-rolls.
Thanks, Nolsi, for your question.
Thank you. I've noticed a lift in pre-rolls as well. Many of the pre-roll companies started to offer 2 half-gram joints in a doob tube versus one 1-grammer. So I think that has to do also with about sharing or not sharing, perhaps. But also, what's interesting too, Adriana, you mentioned that people not really leaving their homes as much, and I think over the course of the pandemic, we've seen value brands come out. Baker is one of them, which sells in higher volume with papers in their bag as well. Old Pal, a number of different brands have sort of come out with these different offerings, which I think really addressed, the essentialness of cannabis during the pandemic, the desire for us to go out less, and the I don't know, the tendency to hoard during the pandemic as well. So it's interesting to see how the industry's changed and created these new or slightly different form factors.
Yeah, and certainly as we continue to see inflation hit people's pocketbooks, I would expect that value brands are going to become a larger part of the landscape. I think that's going to continue. In other words,
I see another question here. There seems to be a lot of turmoil in the baked edibles market. Do you think that will stabilize, especially as the technology Marco is discussing evolves?
I think the baked sector is. I would not invest in the baked goods sector. You have a couple issues around it. One is the shelf life issue around baked goods. By the time the consumer gets it, it's already several weeks old. So it's hard to keep anything fresh, or you're putting a lot of stabilizers in there, which again, I think as consumers become more health conscious, you're going to, people are going to want less preservatives in their product. I again see, the data suggests that the gummy sector is on fire. The beverage sector is on fire. Those two sectors have seen, some of the largest growth by sector, by share, in both California and in Washington. So I think those are the sectors to really look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And we have another question from Wes. Hi, Wes. Is there any way to inform why consumers do not consume edibles? Yes, absolutely. If we prompt people, if they say, no, I don't like them. And even on this survey that we just shared with you, some people wrote in their responses, they don't work for me. I think a couple people wrote that in. Also, we saw some answers saying that they don't like the effect. They prefer the effect of smoking or vaping. And yeah, there's definitely ways to dig a little deeper and find those folks who say, hey, it's not for me for whatever reason.
There's actually a gene that people have. They figured out what gene it is. I can't tell you what number it is.
That makes edibles not work?
Yeah, that doesn't allow the hydroxy conversion to take place in the liver. And that hydroxy conversion definitely is its own thing. One of the things that I'd love to call out is all these edible companies claiming indica and sativa. That is really psychosomatic. I'll tell you what, so an edible maker has to decarboxylate the material, which is essentially a fancy word for a removing of a carbon bond so that the molecule can attach to the CB1 or CB2 receptor in your body. When you do that, you're removing the fingerprint of the indica and sativa. Now there's ways to bring it back in or even preserve it, but if they're using distillate, let me refine this comment. If they're using distillate and they're claiming it to be indica and sativa, it's a marketing tool. If they're using live resin or live rosin or something that, and they did the process properly, they could have preserved it. And there is some truth to that statement. But by and large, especially going back 3 years ago, before the trend was to use these kind of higher end extracts, it was a lot of bluster.
Yeah, you see brands saying that they replicate the terpene profile, and that's how they say that it's a certain strain. But yeah, to your point, thank you for sharing that background.
Yeah, they introduced the terpenes back in, and that's all legitimate. But a lot of people were just claiming to have indica and sativa, and they were just not doing that. So anyway.
Right. Or perhaps they started off with an indica or sativa, but by the distillate, they had removed all the terpenes and all the other cannabinoids which make that difference.
Exactly.
Right. Interesting. So do you feel that edible consumers are different from consumers of other form factors, or it's just this state we live in where things are changing and people are trying new things and technology is advancing and
Sure. Yeah, I do. I think they skew a little. They skew more female, and they skew a little bit older than the regular flower crowd. And think about it. Like a soccer mom isn't going to feel comfortable using a dab rig. It's just, she's taking the kids to soccer. She wants to have a glass of Chardonnay with her friends in the evening, but pulling out a dab rig around the little ones, is probably off the table. So
is that the opposite of discretion?
Yeah. So that consumer set, that Chardonnay class, they're going to look for other form factors that don't feel as, as illicit or as, taboo, if you will. And I'm not saying that concentrates are taboo. I'm just saying that there is a group of people that have that perception. So yes, the edible consumer skews female, and our data would indicate that the edible sectors skew female and skew a little bit older.
Yep, ours shows the same thing, Marco. Before we move on to the next stat, anything else we want to cover here? Oh, I see we have a question from Peter. What about caps, not indica? I'm not sure what that question means.
Mushroom caps? I don't know what he's
Care to elaborate, Peter?
Yeah.
Peter used lowercase for the word caps. I'm not getting it.
Well, thanks for the question. Maybe we'll circle back to that one after. Let's throw up the next one. Okay, so this is a fun one that I like a lot. And this was a separate survey from the edibles survey that we showed you earlier. So this is among all cannabis consumers, not just people who consume edibles. We asked them, and the reason what sort of prompted this is we were seeing in the news that there were a lot of not a lot, a handful, a small sprinkling of hotels in LA that were becoming 420 friendly. Some were making CBD edibles available in the hotel minibar, or allowing delivery from dispensaries to show up in their hotel lobby, or even go to guest rooms, or even offer edibles on their room service menu. So we wanted to know, is this something that consumers want? Are they interested in this service? So we surveyed 352 cannabis consumers and found out that 65% are likely or extremely likely to take advantage of a edible being available on a room service menu. And what stood out to me is that the percentage of people who said yes, they would take advantage of this is greater than the percentage who consume edibles regularly. So this could really be a entry point for new people coming into the market who maybe haven't had an edible before. We know that tourism is definitely going to drive some of these behavioral shifts. And I think this is another example of, this is accessible, it's in your room, it's safe, maybe you're in a hotel that you love and trust, and this is the time you say, why not? I'm going to give it a shot today. Thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think one of the other, there's a regulatory, like for us in the cannabis industry, what we always look for is these kind of regulatory shifts. And Nevada last year, the governor came out and basically decreed that there was going to be consumption lounges. And so there's a big move to happen in Nevada now, that all the hotels and the strips will soon have consumption lounges. So what
can't wait for that.
Right. Yeah. So what we see there is like, well, everyone knows that Vegas is a party town. So this is going to be really the coming of age of the microdosed beverage, because you have this social, the difference between a 10 milligram gummy and a 10 milligram beverage is that the gummy you consume privately, and there's no social component to it. Where with the beverage, it's a libation, so people, will come together, have conversations, chat around having these beverages. I think that if you're looking at like regular hotels not in Vegas, then the room service component would really lend itself to the sleep aid or other kinds of need state products that whether people are traveling, they've got they're in a new bed, there's that blinking light that won't stop, or the time change, jet lag component. So I would think that like products like that in regular hotels will be very, very successful.
Yeah. And the point that Nolsi just shared, that would be great considering they have a no smoking policy inside of hotel rooms, provides a nice comfort to your stay. Totally agree. Hi, Jamie and Dorian. Thanks for your comments. People are pumped up about ordering edibles on a room service menu.
I think there's also, it's interesting because we talk about, well, in the context of Vegas, that everybody likes to party and that this is, an opportunity for people to do that. I also think there's, there are folks that travel that might not necessarily feel comfortable traveling, or they're jet lagged, or need help sleeping. So I think, perhaps CBD products and other sleep aids, that have cannabinoids in them offer the potential comfort for folks on the road traveling as well, which isn't only I'm on the road, I'm in my favorite hotel, I want to party. It's also the other, it skews the other way too, which I'm traveling, I'm jet lagged. Boy, wouldn't it be great if there was a CBD tincture or capsule or something that could help me relax or sleep. So I think there's both sides to that play as well.
Yeah, and I think that as the channels shift into more mainstream, vehicles, you'll see the brands shift as well. So right now you have a lot of brands that are very core in their design and who they appeal to. I could name a bunch, but they're basically targeting the high consumption consumer. As mainstream channels open up, you're going to see brands that now target much lower tolerance consumers that are new, because that market is so much larger than the core. So the opportunity in the growth sector is in these lower dosed channels.
And so perhaps I'll throw out two reasons for that I see. One is the kind of curious, right? So those folks that are curious about cannabis but are not ready to light up a blunt. This is a microdosed experience for them, and the fact that it's a beverage. Everybody drinks. People have been drinking since the dawn of time. Whether it was water, milk, or blood, and creating beverages for the gods. I mean,
Please don't drink blood, though.
They did a long time ago, but beverages are built into our nature, and even the social aspect of beverages, and the sessioning ability. I think that will also start to bring in those that haven't consumed to start experiencing cannabis in ways they haven't before.
Yep. I hope you don't mind me interjecting a little bit. So Peter popped back and said, his question is, are indica capsules truly indica? That was his question. If you don't mind me adding a little context here, and I think maybe what you're referring to, something I've seen too, people are saying that there really is no sativa or indica anymore because of all the crossbreeding, that those distinctions no longer exist. What do you think about that, Marco?
So to answer Peter's question, Peter, you have to ask how the product is made to find out if it's truly indica. Another telltale sign is if they're adding valerian root or some other herbal component to trigger a sleep or sedation, then it's probably not a true indica. But it could be if they're making Rick Simpson oil and they're doing everything right. It might be. So I don't want to unilaterally say it isn't. All I'm saying is a lot of edible makers claim to have indica sativa and they don't. But your specific brand that you have in your medicine cabinet, I can't comment on. Regarding the indica sativa thing, our lexicon, the cannabis industry is so young. It's as if we're talking about wine in terms of being red and white. So there's a much larger the language hasn't been created to truly describe all the effects, but it's a oversimplification. In our industry, because commercial viability is so important, you see. So traditionally, indica sativa, other than the broadleaf and the narrow leaf, could also be described in terms of flower periods. And because of commercial viability, most products that are grown in your dispensary are skewed towards what would be deemed as an indica and not the sativa. In fact, it's almost impossible to find a true sativa at any dispensary because it has a much longer flower period. So the grower can turn a lot less harvests per year. It doesn't have the bag appeal and the nug structure that the consumer is looking for. It looks like wheat. It's larfy. It's not as attractive. And the consumer has equated sedation with potency. Like, oh man, I can't get up off my couch. This stuff really hit hard. And so we have, so we're dealing with all these kind of perceptions. The other big one is THC percentage, how it equals quality, which is a total misnomer. Imagine going into a liquor store and saying, hey, this bottle of Everclear is the best experience in this entire liquor store. That's essentially where the cannabis industry is, because everyone is still very, it's in this teenage adolescent type of angst position where as it matures, the consumer will begin to understand that, hey, there can be 14% cannabis. That is amazing experience. That is far superior than that, 37% experience, which is not even real. Anyway, so sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one, right? When I was 18 or 19, maybe drinking Everclear, and as people's tastes start to evolve, I think we'll see a couple things. One, a shift away from just looking at the highest THC content, and also a shift away from this desire to cover up the taste of the plant in both edibles and beverages. I think that there will be some sophisticated adult flavors start to pop up that do have a little bit of that plant taste in it. That will be one component of it, which is something we've talked about on a previous episode too. Right. So cool. Let's see. Questions. We have a question from Wes. What are the true differences between indica and sativa? I think we just covered that, but let us know if you have any follow-up.
So Marco, moving forward, I often try to explain the sativa indica issue as along the lines of aromatherapy, right? Most people understand aromatherapy. They understand that citrus and pine is invigorating, and in the case of sativas, there's pinene and limonene, which tend to invigorate us. And then on the soothing side, there's linalool, which is typically found in lavender and chamomile and other things which we, the general public, know to be relaxing. Do you think the conversation will start to shift toward an aromatherapy type conversation?
You're nailing it. So I remember when I was little, I thought that space was one thing and time was something else. And then as I got a little bit older and I went into high school, I started taking physics, and you start learning about Albert Einstein and theory of relativity, and you realize that space and time live on the same axiom. Well, flavor and effect are the same thing. You think that flavor is one thing and effect is something else. Well, actually, they live on the same axiom. And so that's why the indica sativa is such a reductionist oversimplification of what we're dealing with, because the flavor profiles are so complex and yet they are what create the effect. So if you're looking for, consumers, if you're out there looking, you want a sedative effect, you can look for those gassy, fuely, typically known as like Gorilla Glue or whatever it is. Those will have that sedative, I'm going to go to sleep. Whereas, just like you said, David, if you're looking for things that are uplifting, you can look to the pine or the fruit, things that kind of awaken. And here's the other, trust your nose. If you think it smells good, chances are you're going to really enjoy the experience. If you think it smells weird or a little bit off, chances are you won't enjoy the experience. So that's how that's my little rule of thumb is, if it smells good to me, I'm most likely going to enjoy it.
Right. And that was, I'd say in some ways that was a lot easier to purchase your flower back in the day. Whereas today, with sealed bags and the inability to often smell, that's taken away one of our key measurements or metrics for, is this a good product?
Yeah, some states, Washington allows for the sniff jar. And I remember California, they used to have the deli style, with the chopsticks, and they would weigh it out. I'd love to see us return to that. I thought that was a great way of dispensing cannabis. But anyway, what do I know?
You know a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, learned so much today. I think we're going to close out in about 4 minutes, but wanted to just shoot one last question over to Marco. And that is, anything else that you would like people to know about you, your personal mission, your brand, your message, parting thoughts?
So parting thoughts. Yeah, I have been a pioneer in the cannabis space for 13 years now. I am excited about the transformative quality of the plant. I truly believe that this revolution is happening here and now because we need it. Our humanity requires, and I hope that all of you truly, find the time and love and respect as I have found for this plant. And I'm just so grateful for it. And I'm grateful for you, Adriana and David, for inviting me on. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful experience. And gosh, I just, so grateful for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. I learned so much.
Thank you, Marco. You have schooled me over the years. You have really taught me a lot, and I think for those folks that have spent the last 42 minutes with us, you gained a lot from Marco, and you can only imagine how much I've learned from him over the years that I've known him. So, Marco, I thank you for all the knowledge you share and the way you present your knowledge, which I think is very helpful. And I just wish you the best of luck and continued success in all that you're doing, because you're doing great things and you're helping the industry. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Well, a big thank you to our viewers and our listeners for joining us today. We're excited to bring the community together and share information with experts like Marco week after week.
And thanks for all the questions and comments.
Yes.
I love seeing that.
Absolutely. We like participation here, and we like to add value, and that's really what it's about. You can find out more about CANNAfact Friday, and you can even get a CANNAfact direct to your mailbox by signing up. So sign up for CANNAfact Friday newsletter. You can see the URL and the link on our screen right now. We are super excited and to continue to bring experts in and talk, and we hope that you'll join us week after week as we do that with your questions and hope to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. So one more note about next week. We have a very special guest. His name is Kerry Bennett, Director of Operations at STEM Holdings. He'll be joining us, and I will be joining in from Wichita, Kansas. That's right. Doesn't have adult use. It doesn't even have medical. I might have to whisper so the neighbors don't hear me. So that'll be interesting. A little fresh perspective from a different type of state. And yeah, looking forward to it. Join us again at 10 a.m. PST next Friday. And if you're interested in any of the content today, definitely check out David's book. It's available on Amazon, Branding Bud, the commercialization of cannabis. And you can also check him out on brandingbud.com.
Right on. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you again, everybody. Marco, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. We're excited to see everybody again next Friday at 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. EST. And we'll keep bringing you experts with data, and we'll keep chatting every CANNAfact Friday. Thank you again, everybody, for joining.
Thanks. Happy Friday. Woo!
Thank you, everyone.